The brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp, brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp. The brothers.
You're now listening to Greg.
Hey everybody, this is Greg with the Brothers Wisp number 152. I am coming at you from the motherland, College Station, Texas. I mean, I guess most of Central Texas is the motherland. I mean, don't go to West Texas. That place is, I mean, it may as well not even exist. That's just like a wasteland. That's what I assume our dystopian future will look like, is West Texas. So just avoid that whenever possible. But we have multiple lovely faces with us today. I'm going to start in the square just below me because I know if I point that direction, I'll be pointing correctly. And we have John Osmon.
Greetings.
Where are you coming from? Aren't you like New Mexico or?
I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And when you were talking about West Texas, I was thinking that there's a whole bunch of people in eastern New Mexico that kind of wish they were West Texas.
Is that right? All right. Well, I've never heard anybody be envious of folks in West Texas, so that's a new one for me. Good deal. All right. Now I'm going to go to my left because I know to point that direction. We have Nick Arellano.
Hi, everybody.
Where are you from again? Illinois?
I'm from Illinois.
Right,
I'm an Illinoisian.
Perfect. I should have just shown it to Greg and had him try and figure out how to pronounce the word. But having said that, let's go diagonally. We have Greg Lipschitz. Where are you from, bud?
G'day. From Melbourne, Australia. Although my background is showing I'm in the outback of Australia at the moment. It's a balmy 85 here today for those who are in Fahrenheit, and for the rest of the world, it's about 29.
That's right. You guys are enjoying your summer, and we are. I don't know. I mean, it's still pretty warm here, so I don't know. I assume we're gonna have a summer. We're coming up right on snowpocalypse territory, so it should just get disgusting anytime soon. I'm expecting it in the next months or so. So I'm gonna hold on there. Yeah, Melbourne. That's like where all the hippies are in Australia, right?
Oh, there's parts of Melbourne which are certainly hippie-esque. I tell you, I'm certainly not of the hippie variety, but Brunswick is probably our hippie capital in Melbourne, and then you go up the east coast of Australia to a place called Byron Bay, which is south of the Gold Coast and north of Sydney, and that's kind of the bong-toting capital of Australia.
Bong-toting capital.
Byron Bay.
I visited Gold Coast for like a day or two. It was nice down there.
Yeah, Gold Coast is beautiful. It's the city of beaches, really. It's just it's a beautiful place to go and visit. Yeah. It's where all the people in Melbourne, once they get sick of the cold, they piss off to the Gold Coast. They pack up and they move to the warmth.
It was funny. I had my worst service experience there. We went in a restaurant and it took them like 10 minutes just to acknowledge we existed. And then probably another like 20 minutes to take our order, and then our food eventually showed up. It's like, man, you guys.
I'm glad they got the memo that you were coming from. That's good.
I mean, they set the bar really low, so everything else was pretty good compared to that. I don't know, man. They were just on a different they were they were definitely retired. I guess they were on a different schedule. I loved it.
Yeah, well, I think you guys call them flip-flops. We call them thongs here. Yeah. But, when thongs is a standard dress attire, then the bar's not that high.
Or pluggers, don't you guys call them that as well?
Pluggers, yeah, we call them pluggers.
I saw a video of some guy, there's apparently like a thief or something like that, and he was chasing him, and he's like, I blew out my plugger on my way. And,
he
was
blew a plug.
Yeah, that's what he was most upset about. Not that the guy was like robbing somebody or whatever, but that he ruined his nice flip-flop, so...
Well, there's all sorts of home hacks on how to fix your pluggers. Using bread clips and things like that to hold your plug in, and get an extra few hundred miles out of your pluggers and things like that. So there's also
wow.
A few hundred miles. We work in kilometers here, like the rest of the world.
Whatever. We work in freedom units.
Shots fired.
Freedom isn't free, hey?
That's right. It's measured in inches and Fahrenheit. So let's do the necessary. Let's get the things out of the way. We have a couple of new patrons this go around, and that's kind folks that went to patreon.com/brotherswisp, signed up, and that would be Anthony Carter and Brad Butler. I want to say Brad was our Missouri guy, or Misery came from there. I'm not sure. I can't remember where Anthony came from. it escapes me. But I think, to be honest, Tommy Krogan sent them both our way, so that was pretty cool. And so those guys became Slack members. So they're in there, they're doing their thing, they're singing and dancing. I think they've already been active, which is awesome. Already asking questions, already helping out where they possibly can. And we also have some sponsors this go around. I'm sure you've never heard of these people, but there's a company called Sonar.Software. It's a scalable, intuitive, and comprehensive ISP operational support system. You can learn more if you just pop over to Sonar.Software. You can actually put that in your browser and it bleeps you to a website. We also have Tower Coverage. Tower Coverage is your RF propagation system to empower. You know what? Hang on. Let's have the other Greg. Let's have the good Greg read that one. You see the blurb down there. You've got the good kit. You've got the good mic.
Yeah, Tower Coverage is your RF propagation system to empower your network, real-time data metrics to enable coverage area, reaching your customer base, and more. The industry's best RF propagation mapping system allows website integration for customer sign-up and pre-qualification. Use this data to scientifically plan your expansion and help your WISP succeed. Get your free trial today at towercoverage.com.
Oh, man. So we have me.
In an Australian accent, that's the... You don't get that every day of the week, because usually you guys plan these things at like 4 a.m, and then I've got to roll out of bed and you just get me mumbling.
So we have me, I'm just Greg, and then we'll have the good Greg. That'll be you. So whenever we need some good voiceover work, we'll get the good Greg.
The one with hair and the one without.
I am, dude, I've got a fursuit on all the time. I could be like a professional sports mascot. Just roll out there. I'm ready. Yeah, so it just all migrated south. You know how it is. Snowbird. So let's get into some of the things. The first thing, it's more or less just kind of a notice to you folks out there, because I actually do kind of like the Windows built-in client. You got your PPTP, you got your L2TP, kind of the built-in VPN stuff. Apparently there's a new Windows update that was kind enough to break those. So I'm not sure when that's going to get sussed out, like when they will fix that. But I know you can roll back the security update that does that, but it also undoes a lot of other fixes that you probably need in there for security purposes, right? So you're gonna have to weigh your options on that one.
So on Windows 10, there was two patches that they announced, and on Windows 11, for those who were game enough to be running that, there was one security patch which had to be rolled back. There was some stuff around the built-in drivers, I think, that a lot of people have reported as well. If you're running the Windows Update provider drivers rather than vendor provider drivers, a lot of people have reported you have to go and reinstall them as well and roll back drivers and the like. So,
have you guys gotten bit by that?
I think we saw two support tickets in the last week on that one.
That's not too bad. That's not too terrible. I haven't heard anything yet. I know I personally use it, but we're having another wave of COVID here, so I'm just kind of chilling at the house. So it's pretty useless for me now anyway.
If you don't patch, there's no problem, right?
Yeah. Is it like saying I'm not sick if I don't go to the doctor?
That's true.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Don't you guys just reinstall Windows every 3-4 months anyway, just to make things better?
Once a year.
Funnily enough, I have not been on a Windows computer for at least 10 years.
I think Nick nailed it. I used to reinstall at least once a year. It was about once a year, kind of on the dot, but man, since I've been on Windows 10, I haven't. I've been rocking the same install the entire time. I haven't. They're finally actually getting fairly stable and usable. I am pretty pleased.
It has worked well.
Yeah, I cannot complain. Not that I used to complain before, because I always thought it was better than the alternatives, but I don't know. It's really user friendly these days. I'm sure there are a lot of people that disagree with that, but whatever, I don't care. So that's enough for the public service announcement. We have a couple of Cambium things in here, and the good Greg was kind enough to put them in there. So tell us about them.
Yeah, so Cambium have announced that they're releasing a QoE, quality of experience product, which is for those who are probably across QoE products. You've got the likes of Preseem, who are currently doing a QoE product. And it's early days for Cambium. They only announced it in the last 90 days and starting to get partners out there to start testing the QoE software. They were talking originally about bottom of tower based deployment, and now they've sort of said, we're now doing centralized DC deployment as well. So yeah, be interesting to see what comes of that. Software ISO for those who want to roll it on their own tin, or a full appliance for those who want to run it in the Preseem-like way. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes of that in the next quarter, and hopefully we'll have something to report. Talking to the guys here in Australia, and we'll see what comes of it.
That's interesting. This is the first I've been hearing about it. And you said base of tower is what they were sort of launching it? That's interesting.
Yeah, so they were talking in their original webinar about base of tower deployment, and now I can see that would make sense if you're running a layer 3 sort of internet service and then doing your breakout at your tower level. But certainly for those who are running broader layer 2 networks and aggregating and centralizing things in the data center, it certainly doesn't make sense doing it that way. So I think they're going to take a lot of feedback on board. From my first question was, did you buy someone and sticking a Cambium sticker on the front of it, or did you build it from scratch? And I'm assured that it is built from internal Cambium. So very early days. I'm yet to lay my eyes on it. There's a few people who have got some articles out there already in the US who have tested it, but yeah, very early days.
Interesting. So, I mean, generally with like the quality of experience stuff, you just need it, at least I thought, you just needed it at least between your network and your upstreams, right? Like it needs to traverse that before it gets to the internet or whatever. So would you, I mean, are they tower install? Because it's like, that just seems odd to me. Because I know, I mean, Nick, how many towers do you guys have that you're servicing customers off of?
That was probably like 55 or 60 at this point.
Yeah. How about you, Greg? I mean, you guys are still doing a lot of wireless stuff, right?
Yeah, we're doing lots of wireless. It's our primary product here, wireless and voice, and we're about 56, I think, towers now here in Metro Melbourne.
Okay.
But yeah, rolling something like that at each tower just would not be.
Well, I think too, it's like, well, say I've got 50 towers. Not only do I have the burden of putting those out there, but then I also have to make sure that they stay up power wise, and then I've got one more piece of equipment out there that can fail, that obviously all my traffic has to move through. It's, I think I would rather just put these at my head ends, you know, where they're a little bit more hardened, probably in a data center like you mentioned. So that makes more sense to me. Yeah,
well, we run pure DC at all of our transmission sites, so we wouldn't be powering a 240 volt AC product here at our tower sites. It would just be unreasonable to think that a lot of people would do that. And even in the bigger telco space, most people are neg 48 volt DC. So unless they're releasing a really, really power efficient device that can sit at a tower, I can't see how that's going to really work unless people are doing internet tails to each tower, layer 3 internet tails, doing CGNAT at the tower, and in which case something like that at the tower may make sense. But I think for the bigger part of the WISP space, people are layer 2 hauling everything back, routing across their networks, and then having a centralized breakout with multiple upstreams.
Okay. Well, makes sense to me.
Watch this space.
Oh, well, for sure. All right. Well, tell me about the Cambium Tx1k.
Yeah, so the other exciting news is Cambium's finally releasing a Tx1k. So the Tx2k, this is their CN Matrix product, their enterprise switching product. They've taken some feedback on board around the WISP space, and they're finally releasing a smaller WISP switch, which is really, really good. It's going to be called the Tx1k series. They're going to be both AC and DC, which is really good. The DC version, which is particularly the one that we're testing here at the moment, input voltage of 9 to 60 volts, full layer 2, layer 3, running the Cambium interface on it. We've certainly got some really good conversations going with the Cambium engineers at the moment. We've had a few changes implemented around the interface and around import and export of configs and stuff like that. So they're being really amenable to the changes that we're putting forward. In terms of ports, this is they've taken that on board as well. 8 copper ports and 4 SFP plus ports. So
nice.
So really, really nice there in terms of power. Total power budget on the smaller model is 200 watts total power, and a power budget on your PoE out of 150 watts. So really targeted to tackle the Netonix, probably the 12250 DC, which I would suspect is that sort of spot where a lot of people will be looking to replace them. Our only major issue at the moment, there's been a couple of little software things which, again, the guys are working on, but the depth of the unit was the killer for us. It's going to mean that we have to re-engineer some of the design of our cabinets for our transmission sites. But other than that, the unit's been running in our lab. We've done some software and firmware upgrades on them. We found a couple of little bugs. They fixed the bugs. Overall, shows up in CN Maestro, quite manageable, Cisco-like in the command line. Overall, so far so good.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. Like, what is the CL like? Is it menu-driven? But you said it's like Cisco-like or industry standard. That's what I've heard vendors, because they don't want to mention Cisco, so they say industry standard CLI. Yeah, all right, cool.
Sure, we'll fix that in post. And yeah, look, overall, like the UI is a bit, I think 3Com, 10 base T, 1990s, but you know the functionality is there. We had little things like the way that they called LACP 3 different things in 3 different screens. It was just about
Ether channel.
Yeah, they called it Ether channel. They called it LACP. They called it LA on one screen. They called it port channel on another screen.
Right.
And it was like, guys, just get consistency across the way that you call things and the way that things function. Little things like the LED doesn't come on the front when it's in a certain state. If you've got a certain port in a certain way and you're holding your tongue against the left side of your mouth while your switch is, you know, those sorts of weird things, which are just software things.
Yeah.
But as I say, overall, really, really good. The AC version as well. So it's single PSU on the Tx1k. AC version as well, very similar, 260 total power budget and 180 watts on your PoE output. That's in the same form factor in terms of 8 copper ports and 4 SFP plus.
On the PoE, is it standards based or passive or what?
Passive PoE. So they've gone for the what are they saying here? I'm just reading the spec sheet. 802.3 AFAT.
Okay.
And they can do PoE 24 volts or 48 volts. They've got 424 and 848. And you can run 48 volts high power, 90 watts, on two ports. So if you're running some higher power backhauls, whether it's something like a Ciclu, you'll be able to power it via the port and then still run fiber down to your 10 gig port as well. So a lot of the bigger radios are running, whether it's an NEC or a Ciclu or a Raycom or any of those bigger, more commercial radios, will either have you run DC up the tower for power, or you can power via management port via PoE and then run fiber back down for your data plane.
Oh, very nice. So in here, you're saying, you're not necessarily saying a Netonix killer, but maybe something akin to that is like, I remember the last network I was playing with extensively that had Netonix in there. I was running into STP issues, spanning tree, like nonstop. I'm assuming they have a better implementation than Netonix does.
Well, we don't run spanning tree within our tower sites because we break up our broadcast domains so that we don't have those sorts of problems. But I'm sure if anyone's running a big stretched layer 2 network, then you're probably facing STP problems all the time anyway. So just route your network and get rid of those sorts of problems, and guess what? They won't exist anymore.
And that's exactly what we were doing. We were moving them from bridge to routed, but in the interim, right, it's like it kept having STP problems. It was going bonkers. And you said this guy actually does routing. Is he going to do line rate?
Yeah, so they're saying full layer 2, layer 3 line rates. Layer 3, I certainly, just looking at what's inside it, I certainly wouldn't look at doing that. But hey, we'll see what comes out in the next couple of software releases. Interestingly, they do have also the Tx1k, which is already out, again targeted more at the higher model Cambium products, where you can have either dual AC or dual DC or AC and a DC power supply in the single unit. Look really nice. They've got the timing clock and everything now built into the switches as well, which is great if you're running Medusa, the 450M product, and they do need the timing pulse, so you can run that straight off the switches now, which really saves just on rack space and things like that, and having to get separate timing units. But yeah, overall, they seem to be listening to what the WISPs market is saying and putting a switch out there that is somewhat useful now, rather than just having to go to the Netonix product, or I know a lot of guys are using the Planet switches as well, the DIN-rail Planet switches, just depending on the equipment that you're running.
So if you actually like these things, they work in your test environments and all that good stuff, do you see yourself forklifting Netonix for this, or do you just see like maybe moving forward, like new installs?
We'll probably just use it for new installs going forward. We are a Cambium shop internally, so we are 100% Cambium from our AP and subscriber module access network. So yeah, we will certainly look at rolling the Cambium product. And I think at the moment the biggest thing comes down to availability of product. Netonix has got a worldwide shortage on product at the moment, which is certainly causing us grief here in Australia. We've got a warehouse full of stock, purely for the fact that we know that it's going to bite us in the ass eventually. So we just buy stock and leave it on the shelf and just hope that we don't have too many faults, because we know that the RMAs aren't going to get processed in a timely manner, and eventually we'll run out of stock. So yeah, certainly looking at alternate products has been high on our list to make sure that we've got something in the event that it all turns to custard. And Cambium's been really good to us as a company. We're on a lot of their beta programs, or on a lot of their sort of feedback loops, and they take on board a lot of what we say. So it's good to see that the product is really evolving, and they're listening to the WISP market in the access arena, and not just focusing on the higher end backhaul networks as well in their 850 products and the likes.
That's cool. What say you, Nick? I know this is kind of the area you play in a little bit as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got hundreds of Netonix switches. They also have, very occasionally I get weird issues I can't replicate. Like if you use LACP on the fiber, sometimes weird things happen where a broadcast storm starts, and it's really hard to tell what it comes from. And it's very, very rare, but it's enough that it crashes the switch and restarts. Just little tiny weird quirks like that, but we use them super extensively. And unfortunately, because of the competition in that space is pretty much none. They don't really innovate that much. Sometimes it's pretty buggy, but there's, having more competition is good. I mean, obviously integration with CN Maestro is kind of a big deal for Cambium only shops. So I'm curious to see what these are like. Another thing for Netonix for us is that they bond the negative to the chassis. So unfortunately, with some of our plants, or most of our boxes, it's all DC powered. So all it takes is you touching a positive lead to the enclosure or something, and you pop fuses. They only have one model of an isolated DC switch, and it's like the 24 port one. So I'm curious to see if Cambium has an isolated.
They do. Their
DC
circuitry is what you would expect of an enterprise switch. It is chalk and cheese in that respect.
So if it's good, I mean, I would definitely probably switch everything out Netonix wise. Especially with the 10 gig ports. Yeah, that's interesting.
And hopefully it can, I guess the real test is whether it can survive your summer over there and not shut down, right?
Yeah, well, we've certainly got some pretty hot sites. I posted in the Slack a few weeks ago about one of our sites between Christmas and New Year, which popped up an alert saying it shut down due to overheating after 497 days or something of uptime due to, it reached 98 degrees on a CCR 1009 passive cooled. And we're actually going around to a lot of our sites this week. I saw the guys in the warehouse this week were actively going and measuring insides of cabinets to put some insulated styrofoam on the insides of some of our cabinets just to give some more reflective heat, save the equipment, give it a few more years. But we've got Netonix switches sitting in direct sunlight on the top of a tower and have been running for years and years and years, and the heat does not seem to kill them. It's as Nick said, it's the weird PoE bugs that kill them. It's weird grounding issues where you get
grounding.
or you either get you get some sort of eddy current on a line, and it just goes and just blows its head up and turns caps into mushrooms. That's really what it comes down to. And the replaceability on the boards, just the availability of parts. They're using really weird and wonderful parts. We've even tried to source them out of China, and you look at the boards and you're like, yeah, if you've got experience with working with surface mount, and you've got experience with replacing caps, and you've got access to a Crow to be able to test your stuff, like it is all replaceable, except for the parts that they use and not standard parts. So you go to Mr. China and they say, we would have to go and source it for you, and you'd need to buy 10,000 pieces, and and I don't need 10,000 pieces when I might only have 2 boards that need replacement. The one thing that we did get out of Netonix recently was they are actually doing board replacements now. So if you send your distributor the serial number and the MAC address, I think it is, of the board, they'll actually send you a replacement board back with that same serial number, so you can turf the other one and just drop the board back in. So we've had a couple of them here from our distributor Streakwave here in Australia, and that's been okay. It's about maybe 2/3 of the cost of a new switch, but when the chassis is good and everything else is good, and we're trying to do the right thing by the environment, but not being too wasteful, it's certainly worthwhile just swapping a board out.
That's interesting. So you think their shortage just really comes down to them using non-standard parts, right? Instead of just grabbing stuff off the shelf, huh?
Well, reading on the forums, Chris, their owner, has pretty much thrown his hands up and said it's all stock shortage, it's all parts, and we're not going to be shipping anything until September, I think was the time frame that he put on it recently. Which, as Nick said, if you've got hundreds of switches out there, you've either got to self-spare and have a lot of spares on the shelf, or be looking at alternatives. You can't get caught with your pants down when either a lightning storm rolls through and takes out towers, or you have a tech who accidentally kills it. And even just losing 1 or 2 ports. A lot of the time, if you're using a 12-port switch and you lose 1 or 2 ports, okay, you can shuffle things around. But when you lose both of your high-powered ports, which is both of your backhauls, well, then you're shit out of luck, and then you've got to go and replace the switch. So I think that there's real opportunity for Cambium to shine here and to charge a premium for the product if they can show to the WISP market that it's a good product, we've designed it well, the engineering's there, we've put some real thought into it, we're going to give you the Cambium level of support versus the forum-only based support, which is the likes of Netonix and really Microtik that are offering. It's not going to be that community support model, it is going to be that enterprise support model. So you might pay an extra 20 to 50% premium on the product, but if it means that you're getting the support, well, it's not Cisco TAC pricing or those sorts of things, but if you're getting really good support, I think they were saying 5-year warranty from memory. Don't quote me on that one, but I think it was a 5-year warranty. Yeah, it is here. I'm just looking at the document. So yeah, 5-year Cambium support and warranty, which again, you're not going to get that on a lot of the Netonix product. Is what I would consider a 30-foot warranty once it leaves the factory.
So if you have to convince the guy that you grounded properly, have debates.
Absolutely,
they need competition, because like even like software support, if you look at like the backup manager, it's atrocious. It's like you can basically look at the source code. They just don't have a lot of support. Even the firmware and the software that runs on the switch is a little sketchy. Like you could totally do some weird stuff with the switch. You could basically unpack the firmware, and it's like the whole web server is packed in there, so you can edit it and do all kinds of weird stuff if you want to, which is kind of cool. But having someone like Cambium, or hopefully somebody like Microtik that has a more formalized way to interact and automate that stuff that's not super hacky, that could break between firmware releases, they just need competition. We use them extensively, even to the point that the smaller 12-port switch has 4 high voltage ports, And so all of our sites, it's either 2 or 4 of those, and we have like a shelf to put them side by side. And so for a lot of the air fibers and stuff, we take them into the Ubiquiti Fiber PoE and convert it to DC, or for some of our backhauls. So we use them pretty extensively for backhauls that we don't need like a DC to DC converter. So they're pretty versatile, but there's obviously quality control issues, software issues. So it would be nice to have, even if it's more expensive, a more robust, solid switch to just not have to worry about that stuff anymore. So.
Yeah, I certainly don't mind paying a little bit more to sleep well at night. That's a big thing that, we've touched on previously when I was last on, was about sleeping well at night and designing things well and having robust equipment. If we can pay a little bit more, and it just we know that we've got that support, we've got the vendor behind us, and Cambium from a warranty point of view has certainly got a lot better. They've taken on a lot of feedback around their warranty process, certainly around the smaller products. As long as people don't abuse it, which we've heard that's happened, then
yeah, definitely
be
peace of mind is big for me. So there's been like enterprise environments or data center scenarios where I could have used MikroTik switches, or I could have used XYZ vendor, but as much as people hate them, I would throw a piece of Cisco kit in there, and once you get it configured and it works, I forget about it, and it just continues to pass packets. You don't have to think about that. And it's like whenever I have an SLA associated with a connection I'm selling to somebody, that goes a long way, because I had 99 problems, and whatever this piece of equipment is in here, I didn't want it to be one of them. So I was always trying to like just quiet the demons, I guess extinguish the fire before it ever actually starts. So but that's not necessarily the scenario we're talking about here, like with these things. And if and I mean, I guess that's more what people think about with Cambium, right? Is the level of support and the level of consistency with the product, right? So that's what you're going for in the wireless market. I guess they're the closest thing of balance of like price, performance, and support of like all of them, right?
Oh, absolutely. And coming out of the original Motorola days, you look at Motorola, especially in the two-way space, and you pretty much look at any police department around the world. What is their two-way systems? Most of them are running a two-way P25 based two-way system on Motorola or Tate. Two big, robust two-way companies. But Motorola's got some solid engineering behind them, and that's really, I guess, shone in the spin-off of Cambium, is that their engineering has been really good, and they've got really smart people internally who are happy to listen to the feedback once it gets out in the field, and get some good product out there.
All right, you guys have any other thoughts on that? No. Silence is acceptance. All right, well, here's one that was just more thought-provoking for me when I read this little article. I'm not sure if you guys have read it yet or not, but I found it quite interesting. And I don't exactly know what the right answer is here, one way or the other, but there was this developer who put out 2 like extremely popular JavaScript libraries, and just recently he purposely sabotaged them. So just to give you an idea of like how big these are, he has one that's called Figure.js and Colors.js. It's a guy named Marek Squires, and I think, was it Faker, gets about 2.8 million weekly downloads. That's a week, supported by 2,500 plus projects. And then the Colors.js has downloaded 20 million per week. 19,000 projects. That is a substantial user base. Anyway, about a year ago, he made a post in his forum saying basically he was going to stop supporting this stuff. He said, I'm no longer supporting Fortune 500 companies unless you guys, with my free work, unless you guys want to support me. Like, you can start paying me, and I'll continue. He's like, feel free to fork this and use it, whatever however you want. But, I'm not going to, because with numbers like that, yeah, dude, this is it is a huge user base. And so I guess he's really just not making much off of supporting that. I've seen this this picture where all these blocks are built up, and there's this one tiny little block, and it's like the state of open source software today. And this one little block, it says like supported by some guy in Nebraska on his free time for the last 10 years. And I guess this is one of those sorts of projects. But what he did is he purposely sabotage these, and so Faker would generate dummy data for stuff, I guess for testing or various things like that. And it instead, what did it do? I think it started just printing out. It basically went into a loop and just started saying testing over and over, and it would just crash whatever you're doing. And then the other one, I think, would start randomly screwing up your text or something like that. It's a process called Zalgofication. I don't know. I'm totally butchering that. But as soon as so he had all this stuff on GitHub. GitHub caught wind of it, right? Because it's crashing all these projects. And so they froze his account and rolled back his project prior to him bricking it. And so it poses the question, right? This is his code. He put it up open source. Is he not allowed to straight up delete some of this? Is he not allowed to modify it in any way he wants? It wasn't like malware. He wasn't trying to extort, money out of people or anything. Well, I don't know. One could argue that maybe he was trying to, hold it ransom.
I wouldn't call it maybe coerce.
Right.
Don't
But the idea is this is his intellectual
property
property, right, that he put up, and here is GitHub seizing control of it and wresting it from him. They've since reinstated his account. I don't know about the state of the code, whether they allowed his new recent additions he put in there to stand. I'm assuming not, but I think to me, it puts a lot of interesting questions out there. Should they have the right to do that? Should he have the right to do whatever he wants with the software that he created and put out there? But you got to think too, it's he's intentionally handicapping all these people, right? All these good people that are working hard, that derive their livelihood from his stuff. I know that's not his responsibility, nor, does it really matter to him one way or the other, or should it, right? How does that stuff weigh in? Just to me, I'm not a big fan of people swooping in and, playing Big Brother on something I created. But then again, I'm also not one of the, 20 million plus a week downloads that just had my software completely brick on me. So I was just curious, what you guys thought about all of that.
I think I'd.
Is this maybe?
I think I would, if I was going to be dependent on something like this, I think I'd be building my own local repository and depending on that and only updating it as time, said that it should be done. This kind of runs into the same problems with IoT in my world. I think we ought to have a flat law that says if you build an IoT device, you have to give away the servers that run the thing, so that if you want to run your own, you can. And if somebody else wants to run off and run the service for them, do it. I get tired of people telling me, my phone is running my garage door. It's no, it isn't. You've ceded all control to your garage door to somebody's computer halfway across the world, and every once in a while they allow you to give some input to it. Folks that are building software on this type of underlying keystone are going to have to be in control of that keystone if they want to have their software always run, in my mind. I get a little hard on that sometimes.
No, that's well said. I even see that in my product. So Ansible has a lot of open source stuff, right? There's community contributed stuff. You can go and grab that, and then somebody will be trying to do a demo, for a customer or whatever, and those public, open source, community supported services all of a sudden stop and their demo bricks, or a customer, I don't know, a Fortune 50 bank is just pulling that crap right off the internet and it bricks, and they're calling us what's going on here? It's bro, you're just pulling stuff straight off the internet. We have a product that allows you to do a local repository, like pull that stuff in, like maintain it inside your environment, inside your walls, build up some fortifications there, test that stuff, make sure it's good and clean, and make everybody pull from that known good thing. So yeah, I'm definitely in the same boat as you. Now, do I always practice what I preach? Absolutely not, because I'm lazy, but I'm also not running an enterprise product, right?
Yeah, if I'm going to charge somebody for this, I'm going to make sure I'm in charge. If you're going to pay me money, you should be expecting me to be able to control it. And if you're not in that position, I think you kind of get what you deserve.
I think the big thing here is it someone who's lost passion for a project, or is it someone that feels that they're being hard done by for the contribution that they've made? So we've seen this many times over the years where people run community forums, and you even see it in things like the local swimming group, netball club, scout group, whatever, where you've got key contributors to those groups, and they feel hard done by, and therefore they're like, stuff the lot of you, I'm out of here. You can sort this out yourself. It seems to me like he's trying to make a statement that he's contributed so much, and why doesn't he get something back in return? And I'm sure he's used his smarts for other things in his employment, and certainly used part of his code in his employment as well. But is it the right way of going about it? Probably not. But we've all made
So do you think it's more of him wanting to get money out of this? I mean, he's trying to drive more value, or is he trying to point out to people that you are depending on the wrong things? Because I'm kind of arguing about that second piece. And
well, he's turned around to AWS by the look of it, and he said, I'd like some sponsorship, please. But, what does sponsorship look like when you're a multi-billion-dollar company and you're a one-man developer sitting in his basement and sitting there? What are you looking for? Are these guys driven? Is their motivator money? Or is their motivator recognition? I'm tipping sometimes the motivation might be financial, but are we talking millions of dollars financial, or are we talking I'd like to be able to order pizza and beer on a Friday night type of compensation? Like there's different motivations and extremes that we're going to here. So I think he's trying to make the case that I'd like to be recognized for my work, and I think a lot of open source projects certainly don't get recognized when people go and either fork them, copy them, just outright plagiarize them. And it sounds to me like that's the statement he's trying to make right now.
Take this as an opportunity to send me a 6-figure yearly contract, or fork the project and have someone else work on it.
Yep, there you go. So his motivator is six-figure project, and I guess if he gets that sort of contract from the likes of your Amazons, your IBMs, your Cisco's, or your Fortune, Fortune 50, Fortune 500 large tech companies who are reliant on the project, he'd probably
with those kind of numbers,
pizza and beer on a Friday night.
Between the two, 2.8 million plus 20 million, so that's about 23 million downloads a week, right? Not just like things in production utilizing those, it's just downloads per week. If he got
so even at 1 cent,
he's
per,
doing
per
all right, right? So it's like that doesn't sound like
week.
a whole lot to ask. If you are like a giant corporation making billions off of this, to just throw a guy a couple of bones here and there. But then also, it's like I bet these guys use so many different libraries. And this is just one small one of probably tens of thousands. Just the logistics of keeping track of all that stuff seems impossible. But I get it. Well, what do you think about the ability when so many community projects are reliant on this to go on there and sabotage it, just quietly sneak it in there? What do you think about that? Obviously that's really shitty, but
there's been a few thought experiments about this topic for a long time. There was one of somebody wrote this really long, elaborate article. I have to see if I can find a link for it, but they basically said that this doomsday scenario where somebody snuck like a piece of malware in a really popular open source JavaScript library, because something like Faker is not used really in production. It's for testing. So when you're in testing and you need to disconnect your front end from a API, you can just mock a bunch of dummy data like articles or posts so that you can kind of render it on the screen and do testing and stuff like that. So in that case, people probably aren't making a ton of money off of that directly, but they're probably using it to test their software. But the article was like, somebody gave an example on how trivial it would be to implement a piece of code in a really popular JavaScript library that basically scraped your browser's like local storage or scraped your browser's cookies and sent it off somewhere. And just based on how many packages there are out there and the way that these package managers work, it probably would go undetected for quite a while. So you can't code everything yourself from scratch.
Yeah.
It's just not possible. So you have to depend on libraries, but open source has kind of historically been a thankless job. Luckily, organizations like GitHub have taken a serious investment in open source maintainers. Now you can click to sponsor people on their GitHub profile. So you can say $5, $10, $15. There's actually some people right now that are making a living on maintaining open source software through sponsorship on GitHub. It's like if one guy makes a cool library that ends up getting rolled into a framework or something. So there's probably some Node or JavaScript frameworks that was part of the testing offering. And so, people are getting value out of it. And a lot of times those open source maintainers, depending on the people that are using it and the people who care or the people who get involved on GitHub, it's kind of a thankless job for a long time. So people will blow up the GitHub issues on things that they're either misusing in the library, or they don't understand, or they want immediate support, or they want some complex features. So there's not a lot of people necessarily contributing to the project, but there's a lot of loud people yelling at the developer who's devoting their free time to give this useful utility to people. So I think for some people, especially if they don't have a large community or a group of maintainers or a lot of this really successful large projects on GitHub, they have commercial products as well that kind of drive their funding. And so when you don't have that, I'm sure it does get frustrating over time when, it doesn't matter how much time they spend on their free time, they can never get all those issues closed. They can never contact enough people. And when there's bugs on people who are trying to make money and they're using your tool to do testing for the tool they're trying to make money with, well, they tend to direct that anger at the developer. And so I think for some people, depending on how severe it is, or maybe they just happen to get a couple of really bad actors that harassed them because the tool doesn't do what they expected it to do, I could see somebody having that experience. But that's why we have things like Git, so you can go back on commits, you can fork things. So if you do use things in production, you should probably fork the important things so that you have a copy of it yourself and pull it from your own repository. But some people have to realize you need to have a little bit of sympathy for these open source maintainers, because it is time sucking. They could spend all of their free time just trying to make people happy, adding features for people, and then if you don't get paid for it, I could see them just wanting to abandon the project, because especially if it blows up and goes viral, or it hits like Hacker News or the top of Reddit, and people just start blowing up and using it. Well, now they have this huge influx they don't know how to handle. But now you have a sense of responsibility to maintain that, but for no benefit.
That article you were talking about, I think either you were telling me about it or maybe I read a little bit about it. Is it like the idea that there'll be like a Java package or like a open source software package that's used in another package that then gets wrapped in a bigger package and then in a bigger package? And it's like there's so much dilution, right? It's like so many layers deep in the chain that like you never see the initial malicious change in that first little thing, right? Or is it something like that?
Yeah.
Well, I think that happened in the Debian code from memory. Something like that was at one stage. Something wasn't being filtered in the Debian source code, and someone was able to write something that got caught, but they managed to roll it back before it was committed.
And that's where things get tricky too, because if you've got a large community around a tool that is actively contributing and doing code audits, that's one thing. But if it's someone who's disgruntled that doesn't have a lot of support, that's just them, well, there's a lot of access you have in the browser from JavaScript that you could scrape local storage, scrape API keys. You can do all kinds of sketchy things in this library, and you could sneak it in through commits. And if people are updating that dependency in their project, well, they're going to get that new code at some point, and it's not going to really get caught until, you know, they've exfiltrated a bunch of data. It's easy for that to happen, and it's really hard with how many packages there are to do a good job at auditing that stuff, which is why you need more people contributing, reading the code. But as somebody who develops software, you can't always audit every single package that you pull in. Like, that's why, you know, Log4j was such a huge explosion of an issue, because that wasn't even something malicious. That was just, you know, security is hard, especially if you have a way that you take data from a user, or you have to parse something that was not provided by you. There's always going to be options for people to, you know, do remote code execution and cause all kinds of chaos. And that stuff's not intentional. But having somebody who does that intentionally could do it in such a way that is hard to see when you're just pulling in this secondary package.
This is where Moore's Law has kind of gotten us backed into a corner, because we now have so many resources that are above and beyond, you know, what we actually need to run things, that when you pull in all kinds of extra pieces, they start running and nobody ever notices, because, you know, you don't notice that those resources are in use at the moment. And, you know, a lot of the programmers are running around nowadays too dependent on that type of thing. You know, how many people are building long-lived daemons anymore? They don't care. They spin up a container, it runs for a while. If it makes a mistake, big deal. You kill it and you bring up another one.
Hold up.
So
why do I need to write efficient code when I've got gigabytes of RAM at my disposal now, and fast processors which will just mask any problems?
Or memory leaks. Why do I have to write memory efficient code? Because if it locks up, Kubernetes will kill it. I'll just get a new container.
The problem sorts itself out.
So it only runs 5 times instead of, you know, if it runs 5 times and then gets killed, who cares? And you know, we used to have things that would run 10,000 or 20,000 or 100,000 times before they would ever restart the processes.
So the other security thing which I threw in the list for today was around Lint Minix. Mint Minix. Let's try that again. Mint Linux. It must be this alcoholic water that I'm drinking at 1 o'clock in the afternoon here in Australia. Someone compromised their download server and replaced their ISOs with infected ISOs, which had packages again installed in it, which did a phone home and thank you very much. Your operating system's been compromised without you even knowing, because the look and feel and everything else is the same. It's just that something under the hood's changed.
Yeah.
You know, what was their response? A
My
blog
bad.
article that said, "Yeah, we're sorry, it happened. Just download a new version and run it again." It's like, you know, that's full on. We're going to see these sorts of things. I think BSD was the other one. I read that someone again got the shits with something in the community, went and committed some code, and that would have been quite disastrous. And someone managed to catch it before it got committed, but they didn't have full code regression on their repos.
That's wild. You know, when you were talking about how do you get these guys paid, and you know, you can directly support a project or whatever, it made me think about the way LinkedIn Learning works. And when I guess Linda before then, they actually, you know, they were doing it this way, and then, you know, LinkedIn just bought them or whatever. But the way they did it, or whether the way they do it is they take however much money LinkedIn Learning makes every month, and then they carve out a chunk of that. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say how much or not. I can't remember what was in the ADA, so I'll just say a portion of it gets carved out. And what they do is that portion that gets carved out goes to authors. That's all it's there for. So if you've authored a piece of content, they just look at, say we get 100 people watch, LinkedIn Learning stuff this month. Like there's 100 views. Well, if I have 10 of those views, well then of that chunk that came out, I get 10%, right? Of that chunk of money. And then, you know, obviously I don't get that full percentage. So I get like 1% of 1%, but it's still right. Like it's like based on like viewership. So it's like, if you have a more popular piece of content, guess what? You get a bigger piece of that pie. And so I wonder if you couldn't just, you know, instead of trying to like pick and choose all these little pieces of code. Instead, just have a big repository that people could donate into. And then, based on your utilization, you could get some share. I mean, maybe there would have to be some kind of algorithm adjustment in there, because obviously as soon as you put something like that in place, people are going to start trying to game it or take advantage of it, but
Well, that's what we've seen, though, in the content space, though. We've seen that with Spotify. We've seen it with Netflix. We've seen it with all of the streaming providers. We used to have a problem with, the Napster and all those sorts of things. And now we have Spotify where you pay, I don't know, it's about $18 here in Australia, and you get your whole family can have a Spotify account. So where's the attraction to pirate music when they make it freely available and at a reasonable price? So perhaps that needs to be the model, that maybe you can, publish your project under something like that through GitHub, as you say, and then you get a clip of the download. I mean,
heaven forbid GitHub take a portion
be.
of their proceeds and set it aside for that. I mean, if TikTok can make 12-year-olds millionaires, I don't know why we couldn't, in the code space, come up with some system to compensate these guys that are toiling in anonymity.
Because you end up with old guys like us who have no idea what TikTok is.
There is kind of a big difference, though, because when you look at media consumption, they have advertisers and they own the rights to that media, whereas a lot of code is open source or MIT licensed. So as long as you provide the licensing, you can manipulate, do whatever you want with it. It's kind of the nature of open source. So it's hard to have a comparison between content creators making media versus stuff that was kind of intended to be open source and shared with the community. But GitHub has a whole bunch of services now. They have something called GitHub Actions, which lets you do a lot of cool things like spin up containers for CI/CD. And so I think for free you get 2,000 minutes per month where you can spin up containers, do whatever. So I have a couple Golang binaries that it'll spin up a Windows, Linux, and Mac OS container to build. And 2,000 minutes per month is pretty substantial, but they have higher paid tiers. They've also done a lot of things, like they made organizations free, but there is a lot of premium stuff in GitHub that they could definitely use to support the content creators. The sponsorship thing is really cool because people can sponsor you. And I know a few people who are using integrations with GitHub to do private content or videos or tutorials or other perks for people who sponsor through GitHub, and they have a separate site that authenticates with GitHub. And
I was going to say,
I do that on my
GitHub, or it's OnlyFans for developers.
That's a good model.
Where's their marketing ploy?
Yeah, they could do. I mean, that works pretty well. There's people in the PHP space specifically who are making six figures off of GitHub sponsors for something that started open source. A lot of large enterprise companies are using their libraries, and so they're just sponsoring on GitHub. You log in, you click a button, and it just goes through your billing in GitHub, and that's been really successful for people. That didn't exist a couple years ago, so I think that's being more embraced now because I think more people understand that burden of maintenance. And if you're a company that depends on a substantial framework, maybe not just a little JavaScript library, there's a lot of incentive there to pay those developers to keep them developing when your Fortune whatever company runs that for all of their software. So I think that problem is getting fixed, but I think there's some disgruntled people over the years who
I would love to think that corporations sponsoring them have noble actions like that, but in earnest they're doing that so that they have more influence over how the product gets developed, right? So the features and functionality that they want, I wonder who's going to get precedence, the guy who's giving you $20,000 a year or just the guy who complains in the forums. So
do you care if you're using this stuff and the developers getting paid?
I know it's a win-win. I think
that's part of the key of what we're trying to find.
It's a win-win.
Well, it's a lot
as long as your garage door opens and closes. Isn't that right, John?
Sorry, I missed that, Greg.
As long as your garage door opens and closes, it doesn't really matter to the consumer.
Mine is still has a wire.
I mean, it's kind of cool because it is like the OnlyFans model where it's all right, you got tier 1 that's $15 a month, and then it's you get access to maybe an extra repository or something, or some extra documentation that's public or early access. And then it's like if you pay $1,000, you might get like more time with the development team to talk about like where the tool needs improvement or something. Also, if there's some tiers where it's like you'll have your company branded like on the repo, so everyone sees your company. So it's kind of cool because once they get enough momentum and people want to advertise their agency or whatever and pay, like they can hire people to help maintain the project. And so you can kind of build a business now off of GitHub sponsors. But they need something for the little guys who don't really have a social media presence that can get people driven to their products. So I think they do need to figure out something to compensate these people. I don't know how they would do that though.
Now we get a little meta here, and we just start building open source frameworks to compensate people for working on open source software. we get a few layers like that. We get in the dreams within the dreams, and then suddenly people actually can get some money out of this for doing the things they love. You can imagine the road these guys are on. They start putting together something that's scratching their itch. They're having fun. They're putting this stuff together. Suddenly, you start seeing people liking it, and they're saying, "Hey, this is great." And it's a great feeling that people are liking this creation of yours. And you get further down the line, and all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, wait, this is a job. I don't know that I want to do this."
It makes me wonder how many of these guys like start a project when they're in college, right? While they're learning, they're, becoming computer science guys or whatever. And then by the time they graduate, they're like, well, I need to get a real job. I don't have time to maintain this anymore. And so, this nice little project starts, falling by the wayside.
It's the difference between a hobby and a job. I'm doing it because I enjoy it and I want to do it, and I'm getting someone else.
I'll tell you what, every hobby I've had where I started accepting money, it quickly wasn't a hobby anymore. Yeah.
It turned into an OnlyFans site.
Yeah.
Are you accepting sponsorship for your OnlyFans site? I hear John's company is looking for some sponsorship marketing dollars.
No, it's like OnlyFans, but it's just you get to go in there and open random people's garages. That's all.
That would be cool.
Ooh. That could be interesting. You might get some sponsorship from, I don't know, B&D Doors or something like that. They might come along and throw some money at you for some garage door sponsorship.
Is there anything you've seen that says that the people that are controlling your garage doors are not going to do that?
I have a 5-year-old. He controls the door. He gets up and he pushes the button. And I can't control him, so you know what? Anything after that, well.
Yeah, I had somebody last night. This is neither here nor there. We were talking about, like, if your kid's not going to do whatever, you have to go in there and manhandle him or whatever. And my kid is standing right next to me, and he's 2 inches taller than me, and he's got like 80 pounds. I go, you want to manhandle my kid? Go for it. Jeez. It's like, that only works to a point. Not anymore. That point, that time is past.
Yep, I'm going to be looking at my kids' noses very soon. That's for sure.
Hey Nick, you were talking about actions. Didn't that get exploited not too long ago? Where like people were like crypto mining using the GitHub.
Well, they could.
I think they shut it down, but I think
they probably
it was like
there are limitations. Like you can't like run a container infinitely. Like there's times where they time out and it'll just collapse the container. Yeah, totally could, because it's all containerized technology, and you can. In the YAML file, you can say I want Windows with these things installed on it, and I want Linux with these things installed on it. So I'm sure it got abused, but they probably got.
I would say that somebody had like written some exploit where it turned out like GitHub like 20% or more, or like 50% of all the actions were just like people like exploiting it for mining or something. So they had to like lock it all down. Where there's a will, there's a way.
That's not surprising. It's like they're like, hey guys, 2,000 minutes for free, really cool. You can run your whole CI/CD pipeline, your deployment pipeline. They're like, can we mine on it?
Will it run Doom?
Like, please don't.
Can you launch DDoS attacks and have them as nodes for your DDoS attacks and all that sort of stuff? Like that's, we're seeing more and more of that popping up. We saw a customer's router this week who's running I don't know if I should mention the make and model of it, but running a make and model which was originally Linksys, which is now owned by Cisco, one of those lipstick on a pig versions, and didn't update the firmware on it, and we saw all 3 devices getting hit with these reflection attacks. And as soon as he upgraded them, factory reset them, and all the rest of it, all came good. But we're seeing more and more of those sorts of things, and I'm sure that exactly that, Nick, is being abused by all these guys where they go, free compute, I can sign up for a free account. What is your name? My name is Lester. Lester Tester. Great. Mr. Lester, how many compute nodes would you like to sign up for free?
How many can I have?
How many will you give me for free? What is your credit card number? It's 4564 4564 4564 4564. Oh, look, the test number works on your public website. Great. Let's go.
Fun.
But how many attacks now are coming from, where we used to see them coming from the not so favorable countries, and they now are just launching from AWS and from Azure and things like that because compute is available. You can get free minutes and it's cheap.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, all they have to do is grab an AWS account, use it till it gets blacklisted, and then just grab something else.
And their team is really good, though. They kind of have like the best people in the security industry working with Amazon. Like they have a full-blown service where the whole NOC will like work with you. So one of them's, I think it was like $5,000 a month starting, but you get like a designated person, security expert. They have some really cool firewall capabilities built in where they've got like a bunch of preset lists and everything for you. You just slap them on there and you just pay per process or whatever. And it's actually pretty cost effective, but they have some pretty brilliant people
No doubt.
at Amazon. So luckily that's getting caught.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, when you can ship stuff for $6.99 a month to my door for nothing, I'm sure you have some pretty amazing people there.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, Greg, I've kept a running list of interesting things that have come out of your mouth. One of them was all gone to custard. I thought that was good. I might use them.
All gone to custard.
Yeah. You said chalk
that's the
and
polite
cheese.
way of saying it.
That's a new one for me. Yeah. Okay.
Chalk and cheese. Yeah,
That's a new one to me.
And then
we might need to start an Australian colloquialism
conversions.
podcast.
And then one, I may have misheard you, but I think you said nipple club. Yeah.
That's what I thought I heard too.
I'm pretty sure that came out of your mouth.
Maybe that was the OnlyFans reference.
I mean, I don't know if that's where your brain was,
See,
but
Greg.
that's where mine was apparently, because I heard you say nipple club, and I wrote it down. I was like, what is that? Okay.
See, Greg, I have this idea that most of the Aussies are actually making these things up on the fly just to see how many people around the world will say, what was that one?
So the best one I ever had was I was working with a vendor in the US, and I said good on ya, as in good on you. It's we always say good on ya, and she was like, what? Good onion? And she was so convinced that it was good onion. I'm like, yep,
That's
it's good
what
onion.
it was.
So we had her running on a support ticket on that one for at least a few hours before we had to break.
So
it to her
before
that it was
I went
good
to
on you.
Australia, Andrew was telling me, well, the only thing you got to worry about are drop bears. And so he went this whole rigmarole.
Absolutely.
He sent me some
Vicious little
very
bastards.
realistic looking websites. I was like, how have I never heard of this, man? This is bizarre. Of course it was a hoax, you bastards. Made all of it up and then made all this.
It's not a hoax. It's all true. They're like cute and cuddly koalas, and then when you're going camping and you put your tent underneath them at night, these koalas, they grow fangs and they drop down out of the trees and they maul you to death.
Very convincing.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm saying, if it's not drop bears, it's going to get you. It's the immigration department at the moment, because that's the number one.
You
thing
guys
on our
kicking
news at the
Djokovic
moment.
out?
That's all we've got. Well, so the federal government's media streaming service, because of course it's all open courtroom, it crashed, so they had to go and YouTube live stream the whole case. When I was looking at it earlier, there was 76,000 people watching lawyers talk in Hansard. Because on a Sunday afternoon, there's nothing better to do in Australia.
So you
than
think
watch
he's
the federal
gonna
court.
get to stay? It sounds like he's getting booted, right?
Look, the whole case is a bit of a sham, and who knows? I was listening this morning to the applicant, so Jokic's lawyers go through it, and they were certainly making some very strong cases there. But I haven't listened since we got on the podcast this afternoon, so for context, it's 1:15 on Sunday afternoon here in Australia. So we will see this afternoon. I'm sure it'll be in the 6 o'clock news tonight.
To get back
whether
on.
he is staying
I
or going.
heard that part of the controversy is they started like doing an investigation, and like he had to start admitting to stuff he had lied about. So he like had like a positive COVID test and went to like a school and met with like a bunch of children and stuff like. It's like, bro, that's kind of messed up. It was in a different country, so it doesn't count though.
Well,
But whatever.
Well, he was the first player to be kicked out of a Grand Slam tournament for only missing 2 shots.
Rim shot. Good times.
I'm here a week. Try the VR.
All right, man. Well, that's all I had. Oh, somebody put something else on the list. More IPv6 support in AWS. I bet that was Nick Arellano, wasn't it?
I just threw that in there because I just saw on AWS's announcement that the Elastic Kubernetes service now supports IPv6, and then in December they just added IPv6 support to, I believe, Lambda inbound and outbound connections, which is cool. And they're stating that they are pushing harder for organizations who have IPv6 compliance. So hopefully, API Gateway will have IPv6 support soon. But that's pretty exciting for me, at least.
It came up on Osnog here in Australia a few weeks ago. There was an application developer who said that he's having some issues with some of the CGNAT stuff with the mobile vendors, and that the response was do V6 native and you won't have a problem. And apparently one of the requirements on the submission to Apple App Store is to actually have V6 native now.
Interesting.
When you submit an app to the App Store.
For a couple of years.
Yeah, really interesting. I certainly know that our big carrier here, Telstra, has made a big push for native V6 to handset, which has been around for probably 2 years in the main metro markets. And certainly the other two carriers, Optus and TPG Telecom, which owns Vodafone Australia, have been pushing down that path as well to, stop doing CGNAT and focus more on V6 to the handset.
Very cool. I just remembered that I just turned up a connection to another carrier, and I think they can do V6. I'm going to try it out. Might blast out some of my V6 stuff just to test. But it's on somebody else's network, so I can't really use it, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't do that. I just kind of want to see if it's going to work.
I just looked up real quick. Apple has had IPv6 support built into all the apps since about 2016.
It's been a minute.
There you go. So it's you've had 5 years to catch on, 6 years to catch on now.
I'm sure.
Get to it.
What is it? The U.S. government has some mandate for IPv6, so I'm sure that helps spur it on AWS with all of this stuff. They want to maintain those contracts. Want to get those dollars. All right, man. Well, that's all I got on the list. Do you guys have anything else that's new or interesting or burning a hole in your pocket you just need to talk about?
Only Nick's OnlyFans site. What's the address, Nick?
You have to go join the Brothers Wisp Slack group, and I will post that in the announcements.
Yeah, he just does
baby.
lewds in there. He doesn't do nudes. He does lewds in the Slack, and then you have to go to the OnlyFans to get the actual nudes.
It's all these.
You gotta get
It's
the
all
higher
these
tier.
pictures. It's the pictures of these tower shots, and it's like these. And he just posted their new massive erection. It's just this big tower. It's like, whoa.
Giving away the content. You got to join the Brothers Wisp Slack group. You'll get the link to that. It's a treasure hunt.
Treasure hunt.
Oh, it's a new
Oh, my
10
goodness.
gig link
All
on
right.
this
All right,
tower.
well, let's do the closing. We'll do it in reverse order. Mr. Lipschitz, if you want folks to interact with you out on the internet, not saying you want them to, because there's weirdos out there. If you did, though, how would you have them do that?
You can find me in Nick Arellano's OnlyFans group, #1 subscriber. You can also find me in the Brothers Wisp Slack channel and jump in there and have a chat. Or you
Rock
can
and
find
roll.
me on LinkedIn.
I believe next is Nick Arellano. How do people interact with you on the internet?
Curious if you're going to reverse it, right? You can email me at nick.a@hey.com or become a patron, ideally, for extra access.
I like the way you got a little deep when
Like
you said
and
extra
subscribe.
access. The indication is strong there. I get it. All right. He got
Put on
really
his
close
Barry
to the
White
mic for
voice
that
for
one. John Osmon, if you want to interact with folks out on the internet, how would you have them do it?
As always, the Brothers Wisp Slack is easy. Be a patron, help out there. John at osmond.net always works. And if you're really bored, you can go to miscreantsinaction.com, and that's where I've thrown odd things at different times. And I wouldn't really call it a blog that much, but it does exist.
All right. I'm gonna go there and poke around Miscreants in Action. I like that. That's a good URL, man. I guess if you want to find me, I'm Greg at gregsoul.com. That's my email. You can find me at gregsoul.com, where I regularly blog. I just did one on creating execution environments for Ansible. It ended up being kind of a long article because I had to paste and all kinds of interesting things together. There's information out there on how to do it. It's just not all in one place, and for a dummy like me, so it's all in dummy format for you there. Let's see. I guess if you have any questions or comments, please throw them our way, either via email. You can do contact us at thebrotherswisp.com, or you can just email me directly, whatever floats your boat. You can also become a patron, patreon.com/thebrotherswisp, and I am pretty quick on ats and DMs and all that good stuff, but honestly, you're going to be talking to the rest of these guys. These smart guys are in there answering all of these fun questions. So thank you, John, Greg, Nick, and see you guys next time. Let me hit stop. Say that for my boy